Which brings me to another group of Americans who are finding that they too have the courage to make a bold stand. It is no secret that the #1 religious censor in America is the ACLU. Its attorneys and their allies are working hard to make Christians who dare to live and speak their faith public enemy #1. And they've goaded some into our own government into joining their ranks. Now listen carefully. While these folks publicly demand separation of church and state when it suits their agenda, and they claim to defend free speech, they actually want the government to monitor, to censor, and to control what is said inside the church and in its pulpit. And they want the government to then punish those whose speech violates their dark vision for America's future. This afternoon at the breakout session at 4:15 in the Georgetown East Room, 2 ADF attorneys, Ben Bull and Eric Stanley, will tell you about some brave pastors from 20 states and share an exciting new strategy to reclaim our religious liberties and to stop the elitists who want to silence our churches. It's something we're calling the Pulpit Initiative, and I want to give you just a little glimpse of it right now. 54 years ago, for reasons of political expediency, the Senate, without even a roll call vote, casually, maybe even accidentally, as to the church, canceled out one of our nation's oldest and most fundamental religious liberties, the right of pastors to use their pulpits to engage their congregations. Many Americans' attitudes and actions towards slavery, child labor, civil rights, as Bishop Jackson pointed out, and even the American Revolution itself started in the pews of our nation's churches as pastors preached and taught biblical principles related to those issues and evaluated politicians who promoted or decried those values. But an amendment to the Internal Revenue Code in 1954 said that any nonprofit, including churches or ministries, that said the wrong things about candidates for public office could lose their tax-exempt status. Over time, in the wake of that amendment, the IRS began applying regulations to the churches that effectively muzzled pastors. Many scholars and lawyers recognize that these regulations are unconstitutional. And 54 years of fear, intimidation, and silencing of our churches is enough. So on September 28th, something else is going to change. On that day, ADF will represent pastors from across the country who will take part in Pulpit Freedom Sunday. They'll be preaching from their respective pulpits and from their respective faith traditions about the current candidates for public office and how those candidates' positions match up or fail to match up with what the Bible teaches. And if those wanting to silence the church have their way, the IRS will launch investigations of the churches that participate. And if they do, on behalf of the churches, the Alliance Defense Fund will sue the IRS.